If you feel like midlife has hit a snooze button on your brain and you've been very confused about what is going on, this is going to be the episode today for you. We are going to dive deep into DNA and how our DNA differs for all of us and how things that we've been just associated with aging or a genetic thing that we have or just regular things that we have to accept, all of the missing links around that could be in our DNA and how we navigate what we decide to do, whether that's supplements or hormone replacement or just sucking it up. All of it can be related to our DNA. I had Kashif Khan on my podcast before, and it was such a well-received episode that we ended up doing a live class with many of you that attended. I've had lots of requests for a second one, but we're going to start first with this episode because I've got a list of questions. I want to go a lot deeper. And if this is your first time tuning in to him, you're in for a big treat. This is probably stuff that you have not heard or understood before. And this could be very, very eye-opening for you. So thanks so much for being back here today, Cash.
It's awesome. I don't get called a treat often, so that was flattering.
Well, you totally are. And you've really changed how I look at health and how I look at aging. And I realized that DNA was this missing link that I didn't understand for years. Despite having many doctors over the years run genetic testing, I never really understood what it was they were doing, but they always said, let's run a genetic report. They never really educated me on what any of it meant or what to do with it. And I also found that sometimes their interpretations, or even the ones you can find online, a lot of people go to ChatGPT or Google, it's just not necessarily accurate compared to what I've learned from you.
Yeah, let's say it's incomplete because a lot of genetic testing companies, remember the word test, they are testing companies. They're not functional health, they're not functional medicine. They don't ever meet a patient. And so you have this sort of ivory tower of here's what DNA means, major gap, and then eventually there's a clinician and they never talk. And this was a gap that we realized need to be filled. So we spent 3 years, one by one, with 7,000 people solving problems. And through that, we learned how to take the science of DNA that already existed, but then implementing it and making it practical, but most important, making it easy so that anybody can use the tool.
Yeah. Well, I want to back up for a minute and share sort of where you even stumbled into this, because I know this was not the original path you set for yourself to be this DNA expert. And you've got a lot of things about you that are amazing, but can you give us a little background on just how this even became important to you?
Yeah, so I was sick. I don't come from the space, no formal training. And then when I look back, I think this was exactly what was needed, is a layperson coming from the outside saying, this tool sounds okay, but it doesn't work. I need to fix it, right? It needs to work for me. And so I had horrible eczema, bad inflammation. I had psoriasis, gut issues, depression, didn't want to get out of bed. And the thing that drove me to the doctor was migraines. So I had intense migraines, couldn't function. So when I went to the doctor, here's the context. Me and my business partner worked in the same office, lived on the same street, same age, same ethnic background, same number of kids, ate the same food. Like, we lived the exact same life. I had 5 chronic diseases. He had 0.
Wow.
So when the doctor said you have this, I believed it, because how could it be caused if he had all the same habits and he didn't have the problems I had, right? So what drove me to seek the answer was when I would ask doctors, what did I do? It can't be a coincidence that, I'm taking 5 pills for 5 different problems, but they all happen at the same time and I've never been sick before. What did I do? What did I eat? I must have done something. And when I couldn't get that answer, and I for the first time realized that that's not what doctors do, it's diagnose and prescribe versus why did you get sick, I started looking for the answer myself. So I explored traditional Chinese medicine, naturopathy, functional medicine, homeopathy, you name any root cause medicine. And I eventually landed on my unique DNA, a research institute here that was studying DNA. And this big eye-opening moment for me, that whole thing about, well, if something's causing it, why is my partner sick? There's a gene called GSTM1, which is responsible for your gut's glutathione activity. So glutathione is this antioxidant in your body that's responsible to bind and help you clear toxin, right? Things that cause inflammation. And the way your body does this is there's different genetic instructions for different parts of your body that separately operate, including your gut. The GSTM1 gene that is responsible for how your gut detoxifies is missing from my genetic code. Not even what version or what variant. I literally don't have the gene. So imagine you're reading a book and there's a page torn out. That's what's happening in my DNA. Now, the exact same foods that me and my business partner eat, we would eat lunch together every day and dinner almost every day because of the hours we were working. What was safe for him wasn't safe for me. A little bit of preservative, a little bit of plastic, a little bit of drying agent in a grain, a little bit of glyphosate. His body was able to detoxify. My body led to leaky gut, irritable bowel, borderline Crohn's and colitis, which caused systemic inflammation all over my body. And that was one of many, many things I learned of how I was bio
Wow.
and unique. And then that's the day where I said, this is what I got to work on. And I kept going.
As you're saying that, something's really coming up for me where I've interviewed so many different experts on my podcast here. And the commonality I have found with anyone that is on more naturopathic or holistic or really, really deep on specific one off topics like DNA, like this, they had navigated their own health setback and had their own issues with Western medicine. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, well, how come my doctor, how come my Western medicine doctor, how come they don't bring this up? And this could be any topic, hormones, gut, any of this. And I'm starting to really believe that people that walked through this themselves and faced the disappointment, they're the ones that had to dig deep and become their own health detective and really learn, right? So that's why they became an expert on these things. Where I think a lot of Western medicine doctors, they totally mean well. They just haven't necessarily walked through this themselves.
Yeah.
So they don't understand that this is even a layer there, right? Because like if you didn't have that gene, if you didn't have that in your DNA and you didn't experience this, you might be a totally different person.
Yeah. And interesting you say that because I now do a lot of courses and trainings and master classes and things like that. The other day, I was just digging into it. I never really paid attention, but I realized when I dug into it that about 30% of our clients are doctors.
Wow.
So 30% of the people that come to us are in the health and wellness industry. They're nurse practitioners, medical doctors, surgeons, all sorts of stuff that are disappointed in their own ability to figure out the reason.
That makes me happy and feel hopeful for medicine because I feel too much the other way sometimes where, I mean, just even in the topic of hormones, I deal with this all the time with midlife women with their doctors just dismissing them, not
Yeah,
understanding, telling them dated information.
yeah.
So I appreciate that they're coming to you for this. When I first started talking with Cash, I wanted to know more about, I wanted to talk to him about hormones specifically. And I had my list of things and he said, no, Natalie, we're going to start with brain. And I did my own DNA with him, and he right away could pull up without ever knowing me, without talking to me, without looking at my blood work, without me telling him my grades in school, any of it. He could tell that I had expressed as ADHD and even some high functioning anxiety.
Yeah.
Can you talk about where DNA fits into personality and brain function?
So this is a big one, and I would tell you that we work with a lot of, NFL, NBA players, pro athletes, celebrity type people, all the way down to stay-at-home mom or dad or like everybody. And it doesn't matter where they're at, we always start with nervous system in the brain. Even if someone doesn't think that's what they need, everyone needs it. And there's a little bit of the ability to tolerate a lot of stress, and there's the ability to not tolerate it at all. Either way is causing damage to your nervous system. So we need to understand how we perceive the world, but also how the world perceives us. Who are we? And we just think that what we see is a yes or no, correct or not correct. A lot of it is perception,
Mm.
which is what creates friction between people, right? And so neurochemicals in your brain drive your perception, and the DNA drives the neurochemicals. So if I can read your DNA, it's kind of like reading the instruction manual to how you think. And
Mm.
so there are chemicals that drive how you seek reward and what motivates you. There's chemicals around how you experience emotion and trauma. There's chemicals around how much meaning you give stuff. And some people are drama queens and some people don't seem to care, right? And that's all genetically driven. An example, the thing you talked about with yourself. So you got these great dopamine receptors in your brain. So it's very easy for you to feel intensity of pleasure and satisfaction and reward, which means your brain is somewhat content. So you're only going to really work on what you really care about, right? And your brain is going to always prioritize. And this is why you're a purpose, mission driven person, because it's like this is what you want to do. It's not what you need to do, right? And the need
Right.
to do gets delegated to other stuff, or otherwise I might never
Yes.
do it, right? Procrastinate, procrastinate, procrastinate. I need your help. Please, you do it for me, right? So, but the want to do part is what you're really good at. But then you have this a bit of a rapid clearance. So you're able to shift gears and multi-track, multi-prioritize. In fact, kind of need to, right? Some people are more bingers. It's like I started the job, I'm not going to stop until it's complete. Some people are like, I did 50 minutes of that. What's next? And the other person is more like that, and that could be misconstrued as ADHD, right? Natalie, the job was read this book. Why did you stop at chapter 2? Because your brain is like, what's next? And that's an incredible strength that
Mhm.
leadership requires, right? But there's another layer to this, which is serotonin. And serotonin is this mood regulating neurochemical. It's referred to as like the happy hormone, right? And what's not understood is the biology of what drives that outcome, whether you're happy or not. The biology isn't hormone makes you feel good. It's hormone allows your brain to prioritize information. So here's all of what's going on in the world. Do you see it like this, highly laser focus, or more like this, like
Mhm.
I see everything? And that's what your brain's doing. When you walk into
Mhm.
the room, it's like every noise, every sound, every smell, that's not supposed to be here. this person's late, like noticing everything, right? And now your brain, this goes back to what I said about perception. Your brain is operating at like 120% of what's really going on. Other people in the room might be operating at 80%. And now both of you are trying to reconcile a thought, idea, a to-do list, and your belief around what's real versus their belief completely different, right?
No, that's perfect. And I think this is really important for people to understand this and know it, because otherwise we're just putting it into a lump box and going, oh, everyone's this, you just need this medication, or but if you understand it, what does that create? Like, by understanding it, what can you do with that knowledge when you have that knowledge around this?
Yeah. So now you know this wiring, combine this with the rapid dopamine clearance equals the high functioning anxiety you mentioned, right? Which is not the anxiety of like, leave me alone, I need to stay in bed. That's a different kind of anxiety. It's more the anxiety of like, I can't stop. There's a fire in my belly. You don't know what you're doing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to fix it, right? The fixer, the leader. And
Yeah.
this is partly because clearing neurochemicals fast when needing to move on. It's partly because seeing more detail, so everything matters and you can pull people forward because you see what they don't see. And partly because you also don't make enough serotonin, so your brain is looking more for problems than opportunities. Whatever you read and see and talk to someone, it's like, here's what needs to be fixed. And that combination is an incredible leader, which is what you are, or my nervous system is fried, I need medication.
Yeah.
Both can be true. And what we're trying to determine is, how am I wired? What is my superpower? And am I doing that? Then it's going to feel incredible. Am I not doing that? Then I'm probably going to use words like anxiety, depression, procrastination, burnout, etc. Right?
No, so what's interesting is when Cash told me this, of course, my question was, of course, well, what do I do about it? And I remember you said to me was, well, it's a great gift and you can look at it that, but it also can be dangerous if you don't learn how to shut that down or to slow it. So that's how he was able to recommend things like serotonin supplements, or you had given me a few, I think you said 5-HTTP. You had given me a couple names of
Yeah.
cortisol manager, I believe. You would give me a couple things to do. And you said these can help shut that down versus just what traditional Western medicine would say. They'd say, here's a speed-based ADHD medicine, which would ramp it up even more.
Yeah. And so now the thinking here is, we now know how a gene is expressing and we now know the outcome. And in some contexts, that's exactly what you need, leadership. In some contexts, going on vacation with a family, it's like, mom, leave me alone, right? Helicopter mom's back. So that's where it's like you can actually manage your gene expression. And the same tool that is bad in one context is good in another. So now there are supplements, like you said, there's Serifos, phosphatidylserine, 5-HTP. There's things like breath work, yoga nidra. There's stimulating your vagus nerve and calming your nerves down. And you decide when you want that gene to express differently so that you're aligned for the new context, which is Thanksgiving dinner and vacation and the weekends. Then you want it to express very differently when it's like leadership meeting with the team, and you can choose. And that's the cool thing about your DNA is you're born with, what we're trying to determine is, what are your genetics? How were you born? What's your design? And then the layer to add on top is, now how do I manage the expression where on a given day or time I need it activating at a different level, so I can,
Yeah.
and this is for everything, your hormones, your mood, your detox capacity, everything. You can turn the dials on how those genes express.
So important. So just to kind of close the loop on this one, you all are listening, you may have very different DNA than me, but just to hear what he's saying, sometimes what we're given is not necessarily the solution. But if we understand the DNA and how it's expressing, we can change that. Like, I know if I had gone to any Western medicine doctor, any psychiatrist, they'd say, here, take Ritalin, take Adderall, take whatever. That's it. Where what I heard from Cash is, use that gift that you have in those ideal situations. And when you're not in the situations where you need that expressing that way, that's when you need to work at shutting that down, the 5-HTP, the breath work, all the things that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's just a different way of managing it and different way of approaching it, which to me makes a lot more sense when you understand that. And I would think that would be the same with somebody maybe that, not everyone, but somebody maybe dealing with chronic anxiety or depression or bipolar like symptoms. I would imagine that's kind of a similar
So
situation.
my dopamine is the opposite of yours. You have this really high density of receptors, very easy to feel, very easy to find what you like and become that specialist, right? My brain has the lowest possible level of dopamine. And so it's very hard for me to feel satisfaction and contentment. And there was a time when I was depressed, right? And there's a time when that was my identity. I'm depressed. And a doctor said,
Wow.
yes, that looks like depression. So if I take my wiring of I can't feel satisfaction and I go try and do the normal day to day, it's not enough. My brain is wired for what we call warrior genetics, right? Your brain is like specialist, expert. My brain is warrior, frontline, risk taker, go do something crazy that everyone will call you being a psychopath, right?
Yeah, you told me I had warrior in me too, so I had some combination of that, I
Yeah,
think. I remember you telling me I was scary in my past or something like that. You said ancestors were probably scary.
yeah. And for you, it's coming from the rapid clearance and that serotonin, like leadership trait, right? For me, it's
Mhm.
more a risk-taking behavior. Like
Mm.
if I'm not taking a big enough risk, it's not satisfying enough. And whatever I did yesterday is not enough. I need to do more and more and more and more.
Wow.
I went from a guy that was helping tech apps and startups grow from zero to some success to building a genetic research company with no formal training. So I'm willing
Wow.
to take that risk and build a course and talk to doctor and say, you need my program. And they say, yes, I do. Yeah. So even that one nuance of how you and me would see the world, if something was sitting in front of us, you would be like, no, not interested unless it's what I like. For me, it's like, give me any shiny object and I'll chase it.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, fascinating to understand this. And I would imagine this is like just even more important to understand with your family members because here you're wondering why you and your husband don't, you and your spouse don't agree on things or you handle things different or you and your children. But when you understand this, it's almost like having a full blown understanding of therapy without the
Yeah.
therapy.
So I was told that my kid had ADHD, my middle kid, right? And this is where, so far, we talk about neurochemicals. There isn't any problem. When someone's sitting in front of me, I tell them, it doesn't matter why you're here, breast cancer, weight loss, whatever. Until we go through all the systems, there's no answer because every system from your hormones, your metabolism, everything influences everything. So we need to know in all the systems what's broken, what's not broken. And now we have a complete answer. So let me give you an example. I was told my son had ADHD when he was around 8 years old, right?
Okay.
Uh, and I said to well, there's only one teacher complaining, so maybe it's just a friction issue, right? And so I dug into it. I was like, why does this one teacher keep saying this? So I looked at his genes and I didn't see ADHD type, especially in the way they're saying, is that he just checks out and he's not available and doesn't pay attention. So I looked at all the pathways, and what stood out to me was his metabolic health. So there's a gene called TCF7L2 that drives your insulin regulation. Are you naturally born insulin resistant, or are you actually
Hmm.
very effective at managing your insulin? So the genetics of even that, we have different baselines we start from, where some of us are more sensitive to diabetes and metabolic disease, right? He had the worst gene version there. Then there's a
Wow.
gene called AMY1, which drives what's called amylase activity, which is an enzyme you need to break down starches. And starchy foods, if you can't break them down and you have a bad insulin response, you're going to go on this metabolic roller coaster. And no surprise, the teacher that was complaining was right after lunchtime
Wow.
in a lunch box where he came from a South Asian home where he was given a bowl of rice every day, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and so he was literally in a coma. He was in a carb crash, and the behavior looked like ADHD. You don't pay attention, you don't care, you don't respond. And if you were to look at it, you would probably call it that. But it's simply a metabolic issue. And now, two things: understanding what he needs to eat, understanding that he needs some metabolic support like berberine and fiber to help him with that insulin,
Yep.
and he needs more complex carbs and not the fast stuff like rice and pasta. And also understanding that that particular, homework time, test time, exam time, we got to be very careful what he's eating that day.
Yeah.
Right?
And what placement of stuff what I'm already thinking is maybe that teacher was right after lunch. So that was even more important. Like, what is he eating for lunch? Where he came in after breakfast and he was different because he had a different type of breakfast.
Yeah, yeah. And this is what was going on. And so you would believe it. You would believe because you see the behavior and you would think that, yeah, this is true. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
But just the same, your hormones can influence your mood, right? And again, we're using mood as an example, but you can talk about any problem, and it's the same story that all these systems would influence. Like some, based on your DNA, we can understand your dominance of hormones. Are you more estrogenized? Are you more androgenized? More testosterone? Are you somewhere in the middle? And when you're more estrogenized, your body will react to stress, anxiety, trauma with more of a worrier type outcome. Because the ancestral wiring is when you're androgenized and you're a warrior and there was stress, you went out to fight.
Yeah.
If you were more estrogenized, you stayed back and protected everybody. You manage the food, you manage the farm, you manage, so all that. And so the estrogenized person is more of a warrior, where the androgenized person is more of a warrior. So the outcome of stress and anxiety on the body is different. And this is the good work you do, where helping women, for example, with weight. And one place to start is hormones and mood. If you're experiencing stress on top of an estrogen dominant profile, you're going to start to drive cortisol to a level where your body is storing fat because ancestrally war is associated with famine. And
Yeah.
your body thinks, oh, if there's this kind of chronic stress, we're probably in battle. I better start storing some fat because the next thing that's coming is famine, right?
Hey there, if you're finding value in this episode of Midlife Conversations, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button and subscribe. And when that little bell pops up, you want to hit that. That way you are notified of all new episodes so you don't miss a beat. Also, you subscribing and liking helps others find this content. And this allows me to keep growing, keep getting amazing new guests for you, and to keep sharing. So when it comes to, I want to dive a little bit into this hormone conversation because this is a really important one, especially with midlife women. And I've had many guests on diving into hormones, and there is a definite misunderstanding about what estrogen dominant means
Yeah.
and what that means when you say things like pathways. And I want to talk about that. So just to give you all sort of what came up around this is a lot of women in my communities on my podcast that are actually in my programs, they learn about hormone replacement. And they learn about doing things like bioidentical hormones, and they've taken that on. And then they hear things like, I'm estrogen dominant. And first, I want to explain you can be low estrogen and estrogen dominant. So I want to just kind of put that out there. Just because you're estrogen dominant just means that's presenting the higher amount. Okay. If you're doing this on a test, it doesn't mean you have a lot of estrogen or that you're even have ideal levels. What Cash dove into with DNA is how people clear pathways of things like estrogen and what happens there. And I'm going to give a real life example about me, Cash, and then I'm going to ask the questions because I want people to understand this. So when Cash was doing my DNA and I'm on hormone replacement, he said, you have a genetic DNA marker where you do not clear estrogen well. You will not clear estradiol well. And you've got to be aware of that because you show that you could be more estrogen dominant. And I said, well, I'm not going to stop my hormone replacement because I feel like crapola if I'm not taking estradiol patches. And he said, well, we can switch your kind. You can do something called bias. And I said, nope, tried it, didn't work. So he said, okay. So he wasn't telling me not to do it. He said, we need to figure out how to get it cleared out of your system then, which is where we talked about things like broccoli sprouts and DIM and calcium deglutarate. So Cash, can we talk a little bit of the pathways and specifically with hormones?
So this is what's missing from the medical conversation, and why you have these questions like, well, I'm estrogen dominant, I don't feel like that, or like I'm estrogen dominant, I feel horrible. What's going on, right?
Yeah.
There's 3 steps to hormone metabolism, and the only one we talk about medically is dominance. Step 1. There's 2 more steps, right?
Okay.
Step 1 is hormone dominance. What do you make? And dominance doesn't mean volume. It means that of the pathways, that's the priority. So that's where everything's going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're filling the bucket of estrogen more than the bucket of testosterone. You're estrogen dominant,
Yes.
right? So that's step 1. Now, after you make the estrogen, there's 3 potential metabolites: 2-hydroxyestrogen, 4-hydroxyestrogen, 16-hydroxyestrogen. And 2 is clean, beneficial, good for brain and bone and all the good things we know about estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
4 and 16 cause inflammation. They're inflammatory insults to the body. Then you would think, well, why would the body even have the option of making an inflammatory version? Because our bodies don't know that it's the year 2025 and everything you touch is a hormone disruptor, right? It's like you're wired for an ancestral context where a little bit of inflammation is good. If you had some toxic estrogen causing inflammation to your uterine lining, building it back better, maybe an embryo can implant better. It's easier to get pregnant. So it actually would have been beneficial at the right dose, not in today's dose.
Yes.
So now that's the second layer, is estrogen toxicity. And this is the big piece that is missing from that hormone conversation. And then third is hormone detox, which is you might be estrogen dominant, making a lot. You might be estrogen toxic, making a form that causes inflammation. And you may also be lacking the detox capacity for that particular form of estrogen. Now you have the trifecta: making too much, making a form that causes inflammation, don't get rid of it. This is going to cause inflammation in my body, right? Then put that in today's reality where every cosmetic, perfume, yoga pant, you name it, is all hormone disrupting, and you're overwhelming that, right? So now,
Can you, sorry, I don't want to get too off track, but can you just, I don't want to skip this part. What does that mean, estrogen disruptive? Like, because people hear that, they don't know what that means.
so there are chemicals that when they enter your body, the molecular structure your body doesn't recognize as what it is and treats it as estrogen. It thinks this looks like estrogen. I guess that's what it is.
But not in a beneficial way. It's not going to help you with your hot flashes or,
So
yeah.
now what that does is it allows those chemicals to enter your estrogen receptors, which means those receptors didn't get estrogen, so they didn't get what your body needed, and the estrogen that was available didn't make it to the receptor. And now the estrogen is now in your body causing inflammation. Hormones are meant to be used, and when they're not used, they cause inflammation, right? So everybody has a hormonal design, usually driven by, here's how your ancestors move. Were they more agricultural? Were they more warriors? And your muscle is fueled by hormones to be able to do that physical activity. Block the receptors with hormone disruptors, you're overwhelmed by inflammatory hormones.
Wow. And then I would imagine when you are premenopausal, so you're either in peri or you are not even in peri yet, you having a cycle every month is helping to clear these. But
Yes.
once you are postmenopausal, you don't have the cycle to clear them. So this is where the conversation comes up about them being toxic. Is that accurate?
Yeah, now there's no period. Where's it going? Nowhere. And your body, you're still making it, and your body recognizes this accumulation and it says, okay, priority, organs, liver, heart, kidney, keep it away from that stuff.
Yep.
It starts to push it away into the extremities, and where it utilizes your tendons, your ligaments, and your fatty tissue. And this is why so many women go into menopause with like stiff shoulders and lower back pain and knee
Mm-hmm.
pain, right? Because of the stiffness of that toxic estrogen, which actually causes your tendons and ligaments to become brittle. And the other place it goes is your fat. When this is why it's so directly tied to things like breast cancer, because that's where it will go. It will go live in your breast tissue. Now there are very specific detox pathways that will detoxify your breast, and those might not also be working. Now you have
Sure.
the perfect storm, right? So now going back to your point, which is okay, this might be the profile. Estrogen dominant, estrogen toxic, bad detox. The straight out answer is don't overload this system with
Mm-hmm.
forms of estrogen that additionally fuel the 4-hydroxyestrogen, like for example, estradiol, right?
Yep.
Or it may be to Natalie's point, but I need my estradiol, makes me feel good.
I don't
Cool.
have hot flashes. I'm going to be in a really bad mood if you take it from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you have two choices. One is get rid of the thing that my body can't handle,
Mm-hmm.
or up-regulate my biology so that I can handle it. DNA is telling us what's not working, right? The priority with DNA is to figure out which biological systems are failing, which biological processes are failing, or which are being done a little too well, like I'm making too much of this
Yeah.
estrogen, right? Now we're trying to find homeostasis, the middle, which is remove the things that my body can't tolerate or add a nutrient or supplement so that I can tolerate it. But you have to pick one of those two.
So you all, what I did, if you this resonates with you, is one, I do not do extreme levels of estradiol. I do a very small amount to take me out of hot flashes. I don't do things like the Wiley protocol or high dosing because I have that marker. Really important. The second thing is I'm very aware of taking broccoli sprouts every day. Broccoli sprouts, what is it called that it makes?
Sulforaphane.
So for okay, which helps get it out. So I eat real broccoli sprouts or freeze dried ones every single day. And then what I do personally is twice a week. I don't do it every day or it drops me too low, but twice a week I do take DIM and calcium deglutarate, which to me helps clear it.
Mm.
So I do that right the night before I change my patch. This is what I always do. And then I'm really always working on detoxing pathways, whether that's through my infrared sauna, red light, all of those things. That's what I personally do. I don't know if Cash approves of all that, but
Yeah.
that's how I've chosen to handle it.
Yeah, so
For
now
that.
the layer on the last thing you said, which is the context is you're already working on your detox pathways. You're already supporting your mitochondria. You're already supporting your methylation. You're already supporting, the conversation we had about B vitamins, for example, right?
Yes.
Getting your methylation right, getting your glutathione activity right. These are all the pathways your body uses to detoxify. So now, if you've opened the door to clearance, then everything else we said doesn't mean as much.
Mm-hmm.
If you've shut the door, then those toxins are going to accumulate and cause problems.
But this is really important for people to understand because if you just go to hormone replacement without understanding this is why some of the wiser doctors are doing things like a Dutch test to see how you're processing. But this is an even deeper level to understand the DNA because this now gives you choices. This is why maybe your friend is totally thriving on something like the Wiley protocol, but for you, it could be very dangerous.
Yep.
So it's important to understand, like I could never do that for me. We have a mutual friend that's talked about this, Dr. Amy Horniman. For her, she learned this. Depending on your own pathways, you have to understand this before you're just dabbling and just adding hormone replacement.
Yep. And now there's always the choice, but we just have to be a little bit bio-individual and just make sure that it's not general one size fits all, especially when it comes to hormones. And we now have the technology to know, 5 years ago, couldn't answer these questions, but now we can.
Right. Makes total sense. Let's talk about mitochondria for a minute because that's another very popular topic. A lot of people taking things like NAD or glutathione, and I don't think they even understand what mitochondria is and where this comes up. And when I first talked with Cash, I was one of those rare people that couldn't take NAD. I would take NAD, I would get full anxiety. And when he looked at mitochondrial dysfunction, he said, not all of us have the same baseline for that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So every cell in your body has mitochondria in it. And mitochondria is the energy production center where your body takes the oxygen that you're breathing and the nutrition in your bloodstream and combining those to make energy all day long. And both the energy that you feel, but also the energy you don't feel, like detoxification, hormone production, that all requires energy and a lot of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that process, when you use oxygen to make energy, there's a byproduct called an oxidant. It's kind of like the smoke. And genetically, we can determine how effectively people remove those oxidants from their body.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not doing a good job, you cannot tolerate oxidative stress to the same degree, but also your mitochondria are not producing enough energy. And it's easier to experience fatigue. Like a virus might hit you harder. When you take a hormone replacement therapy, for example, and cause inflammation from the toxic estrogen, the inflammation may linger longer,
Mhm.
right? So recovery isn't there. And you have the worst possible mitochondrial genetics, right? So there you go. So now the question is, you, for example, running on a treadmill every day will cause you to extreme fatigue versus somebody else who has good mitochondrial genetics. You doing
Mhm.
like a high intensity, keep going until I can't breathe and I'm going to vomit type exercise is going to age you faster versus somebody else that's the exact thing they needed. You doing,
That's right.
yeah, resistance weight training, incredible. You'll feel great, right? So your mitochondria can tell you how your body's anticipating how you're supposed to move based on what your ancestors did. The other layer to this is because your mitochondria are struggling so much, you would get overwhelmed with the typical mitochondrial solutions, right? Throw some NAD or some other NMN or something at your body. It's going to literally throw you
Mhm.
into like a bit of a body can't use this. This is too much for me.
Yeah, like putting fire on gasoline. It's just not gonna. It's just too much.
So you need a rebuild first. So it's a
Mhm.
terrain consideration. The assumption is, hey, this biohacking guru took some NAD, he felt great. Now he's talking about it, now everyone does it. Maybe he has good mitochondrial genetics where the terrain is already sitting at an 8 out of 10.
That's right.
He needed was optimization. You need to catch up first. Like there's
Which is what you taught me. So I started, and anyone that has experienced that with NAD, you likely have this. So I started with basic polyphenols first, like you told me.
yeah.
Then I moved into urolithin A gradually. Now a little bit of glutathione. So it's been a very gradual process
Yeah. And now you're going to get to a place where you're going to overcome the poor genetics and your mitochondria are going to be flourishing. They're going to grow in size. They're going to increase in number. And then you're going to be at a place where, okay, I can actually go take the NAD and feel good, right?
versus like you're going to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like if you have crazy high anxiety, that's not the time to go take on more stress, right?
No.
So your mitochondria were kind of there, like we're struggling, please help us. Then we'll go do a better job with that other stuff. So it's like, where are you at? And we're not all in the same place. And not only are we not in general the same place, but each system in our body is not at the same place as somebody else. So we have to analyze each system and see where you're at.
So if you've ever wondered why you went and had a glutathione push or NAD and you were like, why did I feel like
Yeah,
I wanted like anxiety? And that's why
yeah.
it's likely you have that too.
Glutathione is another one that has a very direct genetic sort of answer. So there's a lady I was working with in Hawaii, menopausal, who her main concern was fatigue. And she said that I live in Hawaii, so I think it's a mold problem, right?
Mm,
Okay. I looked at her. There's a system called glucuronidation, which is another detox pathway, and she was doing great. And that's the primary path for mold removal. I said, I don't know if it's a mold problem because your mold detox is great. There's something else going on. So I said, tell me about all your habits. And she's like, nah, there's nothing I can really tell you. Like, oh, tell me, like, what supplements you take, what food you. Nah, I don't really take anything. Like, tell me. And then one day we are on a call. She's like, oh yeah, I forgot to take my glutathione. 1 second. It's like, what glutathione? It's like, well, this naturopath told me to take glutathione because of the mold, right? I said, okay, I already told you you don't have a mold problem. And now when I look at your glutathione genetics, there's a gene called GSTT1, which is the primary driver for how your body instructs the utilization of glutathione if you were to add additional, not the endogenous that you make, but the additional that you might add, right? She was missing that gene. Doesn't have.
wow.
So now she was taking this glutathione without genetic instruction for her body to know what to do with it. So yes, it was pulling some toxins out of her body, but it was also pulling minerals, nutrients, vitamins, all these things she actually needed, and she was literally malnourished and experiencing fatigue, which is something seemingly harmless. Like, oh, the Kardashians went and got a glutathione IV, I'm going to get one too, right? So it seems okay, but if your genetics don't you know how to use the tool, you're going to hurt yourself. And so
Wow.
that was like, did you not realize that the day you started taking glutathione is the day you started having fatigue? She's like, yeah, I guess so. So she stopped, and literally 3 days later, she felt fine.
See, and this is the problem with one size fits all, like IV labs or whatever. Like you don't know. They're going off of the general consensus. It doesn't mean that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
It's very individualized. What about when it comes to things like autoimmune disorders? Do you think there is a DNA component with that?
Oh, yeah. There's multiple. So remember when I said I'm missing this gut detox gene?
Mhm.
So some people have the opposite. They have the really good gut detox, like incredible. Now, what did I say earlier is that our DNA is somewhat ancestral. So our DNA assumes that you're still a cave woman. It doesn't know what the reality looks like. So your biology is designed for that context, including your gut detox. So even Somebody that has really good gut detox, the assumption is once in a while some plant went moldy or once in a while the meat spoiled and you're not going to get diarrhea. You have really good gut detox,
Hmm.
right? Now put that in today's context where the food is 3, 4 times a day, highly toxic, glyphosate,
Yep.
seed oils, preservatives, packaging, all the stuff. On top of this really good gut detox becomes somewhat hyper vigilant, always on. The gut and brain are directly connected to the gut brain axis, and the brain keeps getting signals from the gut like detox, hypervigilant, like red alert, red alert, red alert, and eventually the brain says this is not food. There's something else going on. This is a pathogen or viral load of some sort. And it starts to produce antibodies to fight something that isn't even there. And this is why so many women will end up with thyroid issues because they ate literally just too much glyphosate in bread. Because
Wow.
yeah, your body will design antibodies to attack what the toxin looks like. And bread looks like your thyroid, right? So
Wow.
literally, if I were to, in simple terms, so many women, just because they have this really good gut detox, didn't know that the glyphosates were triggering this constant response. Glyphosate is used on grains, right? And it will cause antibodies that then attack your thyroid, right?
It's starting to make sense why a lot of people that have it's like they have autoimmune, then they also have thyroid problems, and it's like they also have the gut stuff. It's like it all sort of ties together, and it's making
Yeah.
sense that it's
Yeah.
stemming from this.
There's a step one, gut, step two, antibody, step three, thyroid. But the thing that, but the medical answer is the exact opposite. The main symptom is step one. But it's not. It took you 7 to 10 years to develop that thing with the actual step one, which is your genetics point to what you eat will determine whether you have a disease or not.
And so this is why when you unwind someone with like Hashimoto's, for example, or autoimmune, and then you say things like take away gluten and dairy. And so it's like, it's going reverse engineering versus like you're seeing this from the beginning on with the DNA.
Yeah, there's a lady right where I live, right here in Toronto. Her name is Lisa Jean. She's told her story publicly, which is why I'm giving her name.
Mm-hmm.
So she was on thyroid medication, I think, for 17 years. 3 months she's off her medication.
Wow.
3 months, right? Now, I will tell you that thyroid takes longer to heal than other parts of your body. The nature of the tissue, it's not so regenerative. So 3 months is exceptional. It's usually like 8 to 9 months. Other things like hair loss, libido, whatever, weeks. Eczema, sometimes days,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Thyroid takes longer. In her case, 3 months. But she literally just emailed me a couple weeks ago saying, letting you know, I went to my doctor. I don't need my medication anymore.
And that's from understanding this and then changing how she was
Yeah.
eating, fixing
Change her
that
habit.
part. And then that's
Yeah.
wild. And I think
And,
that's
and
why some people they're not presenting as it. So like I have two autoimmunes, but I have zero symptoms from the autoimmunes because I eat gluten and dairy free for the most
yeah.
part. So
And
I don't eat gluten ever.
there was a particularly big aha moment for her, which seems simple, but it affected her body's ability to recover, which is the most important nutrient in your body is vitamin D, right? It's a
Okay.
hormone that you have
Yep.
22,000 genes. Of those 22,000 genes, 2,500 need adequate vitamin D in order to express and function. So imagine if out of your 22,000 genes, 2,500 aren't working, the havoc that's going to cause in your biology.
Wow.
Everything from your hormones to your mood to your hair to your skin to your bone, it affects everything. So there's a gene pathway called CYP2R1 that will take your D2 from the sun and convert it to the active D3. That's step one. And that's where
Okay.
medicine ends because medicine is in blood work trying to see how much vitamin D is in your blood. But that's the first consideration, which is how much did I make? Now there's another gene that takes that activated molecule and transports it to the cell where you actually need it. You don't need it in your blood, you need it in your cells, right? Then there's a third gene called VDR that makes a receptor that grabs that molecule and brings it into the cell. Now the job is done. So for her, all three genes were not working. She lives in Toronto where I live, where we have long winters and she's indoors all
Yep.
the time, right? Zero exposure. So now this is not the complete answer, but one of the big pieces for her was we told her you need vitamin D 3 times a day
Okay.
because you can't transport it and bind it quick enough. So
Yeah.
whatever you do in the morning, probably 20% of that actually got to the cell. And when you
Right.
blood work, her blood work from her doctor was that your vitamin D is high. Don't take any, right? Which is true because if you underutilize it, it's not as
Yeah.
right. So blood work is going to mislead you to some degree. It's like, yeah, it's high. Now we need to investigate. Why is it high? Is it because you took too much, or is it because you don't use it properly? Right.
Wow.
No, all we did was take your vitamin D 3 times a day. Her levels in her blood dropped to the right amount because now she's actually getting into the cells. And this was a major contributor to all these other systems. And again, her plan was many things to do, but this was a big one.
And did you do that with a supplement or was that with being in the sun?
Both. And so I gave her three options. I said, get out in the sun because there's other miraculous nutrients the sun give you that we don't even understand. If you're
Right.
taking vitamin D, or get a vitamin D lamp, and when you're sitting and working, just have it on, right? And
Okay.
she just need constant exposure. And I have because I live in Toronto, I work on a lot of NHL hockey players. They come here in the off season for training, and I can't tell you how many times I've worked with a hockey player that has like fractures, and their coach, their doctor will say, "You got good vitamin D levels. You're just playing too hard." And we show them this exact same story, which is you live an indoor sport life, and your genetics are designed for being outdoors all the time, and your fractures are because the vitamin D you're taking in the morning, which most of these guys do take supplements, is too much at once. You need to split it up, and that's the one thing that helps them not get fractures anymore.
So I want to go a little deeper on this because this is a definite controversial topic lately, especially when it comes to the sun.
Yeah,
So in my mind, most people are spending way too much time indoors as is. And then what happens is when they do, so they've got artificial lights, which is disrupting a lot of other things in addition to just being indoors, right? So now they go outdoors in the sun, and instead of getting any sun, they put sunglasses on, they put sunblock on, chemical sunblock, not mineral, and now they're loading their skin up with more toxicity, more things. And I want to ask you about that, your opinion there, but then also how you address that someone says, well, yeah, but we've been taught to avoid the sun and skin cancer and all the things.
we need a whole other podcast just to talk about this. So let me give you the summary. The summary
Okay.
is this: all the steps you said, your sunglasses, your eyes, all that stuff, skin cancer. So your eyes are part of your brain. They're not a separate organ. They're an extension of your brain. Your eyes are responsible to constantly survey the environment for light, tell your brain how to drive your biology. So when sunlight hits your eye, that is a signal to start making melanin in your skin to protect you from sun. And when you cover your eyes with sunglasses, because just like any other part of your body, if you don't train it, it doesn't work. If you don't go to the gym, you're not strong. If you don't get sun into your eyes, you're going to be sensitive. Right?
Mhm.
So you have to build that up slowly to the point where you can tolerate. There's guys walking around the Serengeti that don't wear Ray-Ban, right? They don't have a problem. They're out in the desert sun all day long because their eyes have acclimated and become accustomed. That's
Wow.
step one. Step two, sunscreen. When you buy a chemical sunscreen that talks to you about the UVA, UVB stuff, right? The UVB rays that they're talking about aren't what hurts you. UVB will burn your skin. And what we again, we're living in a symptomatic world where, oh, I'm burning, this is not good. I'm not burning, this is good. UVB will cause the burn, and that burn is actually a signal to you that you got enough vitamin D, get out of the sun. That's the purpose, right? When your skin starts to burn. Now that's one step. The UVA, which most chemical sunscreen doesn't block, is the one that goes deeper subcutaneous and causes DNA damage and cancer. So you get this
Mm.
artificial sense of security from having protection against UVB and you're not burning, but you're now exposing yourself longer to the thing that actually causes the cancer, which is a complete nonsense backwards way of,
Wow.
right? And
Wow.
the FDA doesn't care. They know this, but they don't do anything about it. And the benzone that is what's being used, avobenzone as it's called, with active ingredient in this chemical sunscreen. When UVA rays hit it, it turns into benzene, which is a carcinogenic, cancer-causing chemical. Right? It's a complete. Literally, it's like as if it was designed to cause skin cancer. It's a
Wow.
yeah, backward story. So, and this is why you see surfers and pro athletes, all that, they get skin cancer all the time with all the sunscreen because it doesn't do the job that it's supposed to do. So that's one thing. Mineral sunscreen, zinc, olive oil, coconut oil. But here's the last part of the story. There was a research study that was done at Baylor College where they took these animals and they fed half of them an American diet: seed oils, glyphosate, and high fructose corn syrup. They fed half of them a very strict pasture raised, organic, clean carnivore diet, just meat and organs. They put them out in the sun. Of the animals that ate the seed oils, which was the most important part here, 25% got skin cancer. Of the animals that ate the carnivore, zero.
Wow.
So what is that telling us? That we are not allergic to the sun. The sun actually is a giver of life. We are highly inflamed and our skin is at an 8 out of 10. And now you add UVA to that,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get sick. But if you fix your gut, fix your food, there's many people. Look at guys like Paul Saladino who lives carnivore, that lives in Costa Rica, and all he does is get sunlight. He's not sick, right? So,
So what do
yeah.
you there but there's somebody listening with red hair and light skin and who's had melanoma or has a huge history of that, and right away they shut this down. So what do you want them to know? What do they need to hear from this?
So we all are genetically designed for a different context, right? A redhead from the northern British Isles wasn't meant to be in the sun all day long, right?
Okay.
But the answer isn't also lather myself in chemical sunscreen. It's a little
Right.
bit of how healthy am I? How much inflammation do I have? The number one inflammatory disease in the world is periodontal gum disease. Why?
Hmm.
Because your skin will show inflammation before any other part of your body. So know that your skin sensitivity is a check engine light. It's not a disease. It's like dig, there's something going wrong. And
Yeah.
same, if you are in optimal gut health, then the redhead actually can tolerate the sun better. But it's also not, I went on vacation, I live in Ireland, and then I decided to go into Aruba and spend 8 hours a day in the sun. You have to build up that tolerance just like any other part of your body. You don't go to the gym and bench press 400 pounds on the first day,
No.
right? But you can eventually get there,
Yeah.
right?
I'll tell you, my husband was a big sunglass wearer. He's got light eyes, like, and he stopped wearing sunglasses. And he's way more excessive than I will ever be with this, but he is make sure he's outside all the time in the sun. He like literally lays out in the
Yeah,
sun. He doesn't wear sunglasses anymore. He tans, he does not burn. And his testosterone, like through the roof, like lots of things for him. Now, for me, I've definitely had basal cell carcinoma several times, but I will blame mine, honestly, on tanning beds when I was young, like artificial tanning beds, overexposure, like definite tanorexia, and I'm sure seed oils and stuff when I was younger. So, all of that. I don't personally lay out in the sun. I still think it can age our skin. But what I don't do is I don't do chemical sunblocks. I do mineral, if anything, and I shade. So I'll put
yeah,
hat on my head, but I do make sure I'm getting sunrise, sunset, and a little bit in the middle of the day. That's how I've navigated it.
yeah. The sun will, I mean, we hear all this about red light therapy and people going to clinics for red light beds. You know, the sun will give you a therapeutic dose of red light if you go out in the first 45 minutes or the last 45 minutes. And so even
Wow.
if that, even if you just do that one thing, and especially for you, Natalie needs mitochondrial support. One of the best things you can do for your mitochondria is red light. So
Which
the
is what I
sun
do.
has all these healing tools in it that we ignore and we mask it with other things. But yeah, just get out in the sun last 45 minutes and the red light won't burn you, right?
Yeah. And
It's,
I have one at my house as well. So I'll do that as well.
yeah.
Okay, so the next question I have for you is about when it comes to weight loss, fat loss, help specifically with that and where this relates to DNA.
So anyone that we talk about weight loss or any problem for that matter, we always say we're not looking for a weight loss gene. We're not looking for a magic silver bullet. We're going to go through all the systems and figure out how each one of them is affecting your weight issue, right? I'm doing everything right. I eat properly. Everything's good. Why can't I lose weight? So many people are stuck. So we go through all the systems. We first have to look at mood and say, is cortisol driving it? Because cortisol will tell your body to store fat. Maybe it's your mood, and maybe that's one of many pillars. Second, we have to look at your gut because if you there's genetics around how you manage the diversity of your gut microbiome bacteria. And when you start to drop in things like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria and akkermansia, you can't burn fat the way you used to. The metabolic state changes. So sometimes it's that, and that's one layer to the story. Then we look at, your hormones, and in terms of if you are more estrogenized, that's a signal for fat retention. That's a structural body design signal. Right?
Mm,
The voluptuous woman with larger breasts, larger hips, that's an estrogen signal. The lean, thin, wiry woman with lean muscle fiber, that's an
yep.
estrogen signal, right? So what is your body actually being told? And then you can interject in the right place to slow things down. But a lot of it is also perception driven by things like satiety and neurochemicals. So there are genes that are responsible to communicate between your gut and your brain so that your brain knows when you're full. And some people don't do a good job of that. So it's much easier to still actually feel hungry even though you've eaten enough and go for that second and third helping, right? It's a genetic wiring. And this is meant to be a survival trait for somebody who was more like a warrior that didn't have
Yeah.
access to calories, right? That when you got it, you packed it in. Then there's other genes around the satiety of your palate. Some people will eat their meal and then it's like, now I need my Doritos and now I need the cookies, but now I need some Doritos again, but maybe now some ice cream, right? And why is that happening? Because there's literally signals in your palate that are looking for diversity, variety. And the more diversity, the more those signals get satisfied. And then it tells your brain, shut the appetite off. And if you have that, this is again a survival trait designed for someone who didn't get enough food. Then when they got it, they got the diversity for nutrition. And so the ways to solve it are unique based on the problem. But there's also what we said about you, the high functioning anxiety. And
Hmm.
live in a context that is driving the stress of high functioning anxiety, then often the body starts to recognize that this is too much, cortisol is too high, and this is inflammatory, and I need to do something about it. So it will give you coping mechanisms. It will give you go actually turn your hunger on to go grab some cheesecake and feel happy. And you're actually going to think that you're hungry when you're not,
Right.
right? And that's your body's way of coping. And so this is why I'm saying that any question we ask, whether it's hair loss, breast cancer, weight loss, whatever, we would go through all the systems to figure out how each one is contributing. And now if you chip away at every possible path to the problem, there's no problem anymore, right? And it goes back to what you said. You either remove the thing you can't deal with, or you add some kind of nutrient or supplement to bring your biology up as if the problem wasn't there.
So good. Oh gosh, I could like talk to you for hours, and I'm not gonna. I'm gonna have to have you back on. But I'm gonna. You guys, the last time I did a podcast with him, and I'm gonna link that last podcast with him as well, so you also have that access if you want to hear more right now. But what we did last time is we did a master class. We did like a webinar, like or whatever we want to call it, workshop. We did a bigger deep dive with those of you that heard this and want to go deeper and actually be able to ask him questions and interact. It's so good. We're going to do another one, and we're going to do it on August 7th. August 7th. And I'm going to put it in the show note, wherever you're watching this, whether it's on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, I'm going to put a link below. But if you go to midlifeconversations.com/DNA, so midlifeconversations.com/DNA, sign up and save your spot. It is free, but I want to make sure you save your spot so you come on, and we're going to be on. It'll be like a Zoom kind of situation or something like that we do it on. I don't even remember what it was. We did it on Cash, but we'll do something like that where you can see us. I will be on there, but Cash is going to be teaching. You can ask as many questions as you want. And you all, the last time I did this class with him, it changed people's lives. Like, I cannot tell you how many people were like, I can't believe I almost did not come to that free class. It is so good. So I'm going to link it below. Make sure you come on. I'll also link the last podcast we did. But Cash, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I always learn so much from you.
Yeah, it's an honor. And also, yeah, I'm excited about the class because it's not often, like, because of technology, we can talk to people all over the world all at the same time. And that's really cool. Like, and people showing up with their questions, I could just directly tell them about their unique thing. That to me is awesome.
So good. So good. Thank you, Cash.